this is part of the reason why I wanted to do this video, to help others realize that I'm completely normal, have been through exactly everything that everybody else has been through, and had come to a point where I thought, that's it, I'm broken. In fact, my husband turned to me and said, well, we're both heading towards the 40s, and you just have to accept that we're down the path of life. And I'm, if anyone knows me, I'm very tenacious, and I would not accept that.
Hello my honeys, it's Emmie. If you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is Emmie. I'm a nutritionist and the creator of the Slim on Starch program. If you want to work with me as well as a mindset coach and a nutrition coach, go to healthyemmie.org or just click the link in the down bar. Today I have the pleasure of sharing with you the story of my client Emma. Emma is 40 years young and she has done every diet in the book. As you're going to hear in her interview, she talks about how since she was a child up until the point that we started working together, processed food and sugary foods were things that she relied on in order to feel a release and relief and pleasure, and she couldn't break that trap. And to make matters more complicated, Emma also has PCOS. And for my ladies that have polycystic ovarian syndrome, you know that weight loss is extremely difficult when you do have PCOS. Emma came with the goal of breaking free from the binge eating cycle and to lose 10 to 15 pounds. Emma lost over 20 pounds during the course of our work together, which she'll be very excited to tell you during the interview, and I don't want to delay it anymore. So let's get into it.
I have a very long history of being overweight, and had quite a miserable childhood as a result of that. I think particularly in my secondary school, so high school years, I was very noticeably overweight for a long period of time. I think at the age of 11, I was 11 stone. I think it's about 150 pounds in American terms. But I was really sad, and I didn't fit into clothes that were trendy for young people of my age, and I never really dated. And as you kind of grew up into that secondary school world, it became very obvious to me that I needed to do something about this. But that just ensued a cycle of crash dieting, following the latest fad. You name it, I did it. Even in my early teenage years, I was restricting probably from the ages of probably 10. And it probably led me to a life of binge restrict, with the illusion of looking like I was being really healthy, but actually behind the scenes probably was binging incessantly to kind of counterbalance what was the restriction that I was doing. It also led to quite a pattern of exercising insanely, and believing that was going to be the route to solving all my ills. And for a while it did actually help, because I went from not exercising at all to exercising, so that was always going to make a difference. But it didn't necessarily mean that I was having a healthy relationship with my body, or the food that I ate, or the exercise that I was doing. And it actually became a bit of an obsession. And I'm sure, having seen all the videos that you've done before with other clients, it's a similar pattern of kind of trying to get out of that unhealthy relationship with food, exercise, and particularly being at peace. I don't think I've ever really been at peace until this moment, having done your program, with the idea of just being able to be in control, but without thinking about it, and effortlessness. And so my childhood definitely was not effort free.
And to add to this, there was a PCOS diagnosis. When did that come about?
That was actually pretty late on. I think I always knew that there was something wrong, because I had problems with my periods right from the very early age, and all the way through my 20s I was on the pill, and trying lots of different ways of trying to get on top of what was a really erratic and quite stressful cycle. But it wasn't until I was in my early 30s that they actually formally diagnosed it. Again, a lot of doctors tended to dismiss me because I was saying I'm eating healthily and I'm exercising, yet I'm putting on loads of weight, which is one of the consequences of being with PCOS. But they just look at me and go, "Oh, you're just big boned," or actually, there's nothing. It's not something that's well understood as a disease. And I think as a result of that, it's so easily misdiagnosed. And to be honest, even when it was diagnosed, they just gave me diabetic medication, which made me feel really ill, to do with the insulin resistance that sometimes obviously it appears with PCOS. But it didn't help. All it did was give me a diagnosis, but told me I couldn't do anything about it. And being the tenacious person that I am, I didn't really accept that. So I went on a crusade for a long time to try and find a solution to it. And actually, having read so much about healthy eating, healing yourself through diet, I knew that there was something in there, but I just couldn't quite find it.
And I know that we had talked about when we first started working together that sugar was sort of your kryptonite, and you have.
Oh, without doubt.
Tell us more about that.
I think it's again started at a very, very early age. I think I could easily eat sherbet fountains, which I think in the UK, I don't know if you have them in America, but I could eat 4 or 5 of those, not even breathe. And so I think have this incessant and uncontrollable appetite, and it wasn't hunger, it was appetite, which I now know the difference between. And as a result of that, I couldn't stop. It was this perpetuating cycle of not being able to stop eating it. I mean, I'm ashamed to say that I could eat an entire jar of jam at one sitting and not even think about it, because my brain kicked in and the spoon kept going, and I wouldn't even know I was doing it. And then I'd get to the end and feel awful because the sugar high would kick in, and I'd feel quite dreadful. And not really know. It was almost like I'd go into a subconscious state, because my Neanderthal brain that says this is lots of calories you must eat, and so I couldn't stop, and so I never really felt in control of my food. It felt like it was controlling me, and as a result of that, I tried to abstain, but I don't think I ever abstained for long enough to really understand how to clear the decks before and get a healthy relationship before having a system of eating that kind of allowed me to have some interaction with sugar. But actually, I don't miss it now at all. In fact, when I do have something that has sugar in it, which is very rare, it doesn't taste good to me anymore.
So now looking back on it, you didn't know at the time, but now looking back on it, because you've gone through the program and we've talked about it, what emotion were you going for when you would have that rush, the sugar rush?
Sometimes it was zoning out to deal with stress. It was a kind of oblivion state, and it definitely did that. Other times it was a dopamine kick and trying to have that feel good factor. But mostly it was to do with stressful situations. I know that it would be my go-to to have a dopamine kick if I was having a stressful situation, or even if I was tired, because again, my body knew that it would give me a kick. But it was never really a sustained kick, and it never really felt good afterwards. And then you'd end up being in the binge cycle again because you'd feel so guilty for doing it. And then you'd go back into the sugar again because you were tired from restricting. So it was this ever perpetuating circle of nothingness that you just couldn't escape. But fundamentally, it was about being a kind of this oblivion, a dopamine kick.
If you are enjoying this video, please give it a thumbs up and make sure to hit subscribe. It really supports my channel.
What would go through your head when you would make the decision, okay, I'm going to go get the candy bar, the chocolate bar? Would it be exciting?
Yeah, there probably was an excitement, and there probably was almost a kind of, I wanted to hide it away. There was a good bit of a guilt, probably, because I knew that really once I'd had one, I probably wouldn't be able to have one. I'd have to have 6. And so there'd be this perpetuating cycle of guilt. But the initial rush, and it was a rush. And so it was almost like a drug addict, with sugar. And actually, I think sugar is probably more addictive than most other pharmaceutical drugs you could name, but is so widely available, you almost can't escape it. I mean, even when you start to look at packets on just simple foods, it's in there. It's no wonder that we're addicted to it, because it's this constant injection of sugar. So the big hits have to be bigger and bigger in order to sustain that rush. And that's what happened. It got to the point where there was just no end to it. And so sugar would be the kind of quick fix, but it would then be the spiral down out of it.
There's some studies that show that some of the additives in processed foods are similar to the effects of opioids, things like cocaine. We get similar brain responses to that.
Exactly.
it really is an addictive like thing with these highly processed, high fat, high sugar foods. And just to be clear for people listening, sugar in and of itself is not bad. Sugar in fruit and sugar in potatoes and rice, wonderful. But when we take sugar and we pair it with oil and salt and we make these doctored up high fat, high calorie products, the brain goes crazy. And I often hear that these behaviors are almost always done in secrecy, in private. Secrets keep us
Yep.
and these things are never happening in front of other people. Can you talk us through what the come down from it felt like? Would it be, if you're staying in a parking lot or they're home alone? What did that feel like afterward?
It was always very lonely. And you'd want to share it with somebody, which was quite perverse, but you'd want to say, I'd done this to kind of offload the guilt, but you'd never want to tell anybody because you were ashamed of what you'd done. And I mean, physically, it felt awful. And it wouldn't take very long for the physical kind of sugar rush to kick out, and just the symptom of just feeling really quite poorly afterwards. And it was a very lonely game because the outside, it almost meant that I had to pretend even harder that I was healthy eating as a result of this. And so my outside persona was probably even stronger then, because whenever I went out to eat in public or with friends, it was always very, very disciplined. But only to really realise that when I got home, or knowing that I'd deliberately restricted myself from having something, it would then just kick out again, because my brain would take over, and as soon as I'd see something, and your environment is so important in the back to do with having those sugar cravings, that it was almost impossible to avoid it unless it wasn't in the house, because at some point I knew it probably would break. And particularly because I was being so disciplined, it meant I just didn't have a healthy relationship, and that's why it kicked out.
What did you try to eradicate this binge restrict cycle?
Oh, I think I've tried every diet on the planet, which actually probably made it worse. And I think going vegan, I think, did help, because I was probably eating a less processed diet. I did lots of dieting, which actually made it worse. I've seen naturopaths. I've taken packs where you have to try and take medications like chromium and magnesium to try and give you less cravings. I mean, you name it. If I saw it on Instagram or YouTube or Google, I probably have tried it, and actually just made myself more and more confused. And that's why I think, because having before found you, I got to the point where I couldn't sustain anything, because I was so confused what I should be doing, that I just came in a complete state of stasis. And so, having tried everything, and I've tried fat burners, I've tried all kinds of medications to try and be thin and also kick the sugar habit, but none of them were ever sustainable, because they didn't solve the core problem, which was just having a healthy relationship.
I would argue with you, Em, and with most people that I work with, that you didn't have a binge problem, you didn't have a sugar problem, you had a restriction problem. And that is the offset of it. And most people say, I'm a binger, so I need to restrict to take care of it. Or I have a sugar problem, so I need to diet to take care of it. When really it's the dieting that causes that shoving it in behavior. That's the body's reaction to needing food. At the time, though, were you under the impression, I have a sugar problem, I go crazy around this food, and so I need to take care of this and I need to diet it away?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I believed, I thought there was something wrong with my metabolism. I thought there was something wrong with my, my taste buds, and therefore I was just a sugar person. And actually, there was a guilt around eating, which made the sugar cravings worse, because substantively, as you say, I was actually just hungry, and I wasn't at peace with being able to be hungry, and that was a big problem. Whereas now, if I'm hungry, I will have a big plate of food. It just won't be processed food, and it'll substantively follow my plan. And I still have the ability to be more free with that. And there's just no thinking to it. There's just no thinking.
What was it that made you finally reach out to me?
I binge watched all of your videos. So this is part of the reason why I wanted to do this video, to help others realize that I'm completely normal, have been through exactly everything that everybody else has been through, and had come to a point where I thought, that's it, I'm broken. In fact, my husband turned to me and said, well, we're both heading towards the 40s, and you just have to accept that we're down the path of life. And if anyone knows me, I'm very tenacious, and I would not accept that. And I knew in my heart of hearts that really I had most of the tools. I'd read all the books, I'd read the Starch Solution, I'd seen Chef AJ, and that's actually the path that took me to kind of your videos. And I just thought, you know what, enough's enough. I just need to do this for long enough and committed enough, but following somebody who can just show me where I'm going wrong. And it wasn't huge areas I was going wrong in, but they just were missing. And without it, I still think I would have been in a cycle where I would have got to a point where I probably would have done a month. On a good day, I probably would have done a push of a month, and then got to a point where I was like, I'm not sure this is right anymore, and find the next thing. Whether it be keto, whether it be high fat, low fat, there was always something that was the next big thing, because it hadn't quite worked out for that, because I never committed to sorting out my healthy relationship and habit forming, which is the big thing that I think I've learned through all of this. Makes life so much easier, because it's not motivation that's keeping me going, it's a commitment through habit.
Yes, said beautifully. Something that I always say, we cannot rely on motivation. Motivation is going to dry up. We have got to be committed day in and day out, and that's that. So how did this go at the beginning when we first jumped into it? Walk us through what the beginning looked like.
I got very depressed on the first day, because I weighed, having not weighed myself for a very long time, even though I knew really where I was at. It was probably slightly higher than where I was at. I think I was at 156 pounds when I joined the program. And I think having done the first call with you, I was really nervous before that first call, because I was signing my name to this and going for it. And it was something I'd never really done before, in terms of following that kind of program. But my first few weeks, the first week I lost a lot amount of weight. It was a bit of a shock to the system, I think. But then I had a bit of a roller coaster for a while, and I stayed the course despite feeling slightly demotivated. But fundamentally, when we looked week on week, and that's again about seeing this bigger picture and not focusing in on the minutiae detail, week on week I was still losing weight, but I was so focused on what was that scale for that particular week, that I really had to think much bigger than this, and actually realize that I felt well, I felt able to sleep, I felt calmer, I felt more in control without having to put any effort in, and the longer I did it, the better it felt, and that's why I went onto the master's course, which you were kind enough to let me on.
Mm-hmm. My pleasure to do so. Looking back, we say hindsight is 20/20, and there were times then where I wish I could have jumped through the screen and ended up in the UK with you, so that I could sort of talk you off a ledge for a moment. If the scale would pause, it wouldn't go down or jump up, because of hormonal reasons. Looking back on it, what advice would you give to Em during the program when the number on the scale was going up and down, as it was going down overall?
That you just to trust the process. I'm using one of your Emmieisms, but just to trust the process, because fundamentally it works. And I think my nervousness came from just an inability to see long-term progress. And I think I doubted myself and anything that I tried in the short term. But knowing that I stuck the course during that process meant that I just ploughed straight on. I just had to keep going because I committed to it. And I just thought, well, what else is there to do? You've tried everything else, so you just need to keep going. And actually, in the end, the longer term I went, the even more weight I lost, and I completely smashed my weight goal loss with and some. I never really believed that and actually that's part of what, when I first started with you, obviously you ask, what are your goals? And I said, I'd really like to lose between 10 and 14 pounds. And I genuinely believed I couldn't get below that goal weight that I'd set myself to begin with, because I'd never been below that weight. But actually, I smashed it and some.
Yes. You know, it's so important to ask ourselves, what lies am I telling myself right now? What thoughts am I taking as fact? And the first thought is, I can't see this working today, so it doesn't work at all. That's a microscope approach as opposed to a telescope approach. And then the second thought that we're treating as fact, which is a lie, is this won't work for me because nothing works for me. So these thoughts run through our head and we automatically say that they're facts, but thoughts are not facts. We need to fact check the thoughts that we're having. And I'm so thrilled that you kind of realized or forced yourself to stick with it and say, I have no other choice. Where else am I going to go? What else am I going to do? I've done it all. So this is the one thing I haven't done, which is put full trust into a process and my coaches. And I'm so glad that you did.
Yeah, me too. And I think having that constant reminder through the check-ins were a really good motivator all the way through the program. And I still take photographs of my food now. I don't have anywhere to send them to, but I still take them.
I love it. So now it's time to show off. You have been so vulnerable, which I so appreciate, talking about what you've been through. And now let's talk about what the other side looks like and what you created for yourself.
Yeah, well, in total, I've lost 25 pounds. But what I've gained is so much more than that. And actually the ability to retain those 25 pounds off, and have a sense of calm around food, and know what I can and can't, within my system day to day, what I'm genuinely, is my kind of core system that I follow systematically most of the time, but then also what I can allow myself to have within those parameters. Because before I didn't know, I had no scientific way of proving, which is why the latter part of the master's program is so helpful, because that trial at the end that allows you to test your system in place while you've got the safety net of having your coaches in place and you, meant that I had confidence to try. I was scared, and I'm sure a lot of people are scared once they've been so disciplined and you're allowing yourself a system that you create. But I think there was just a general sense of calm and just, I'm not bothered by food. I think if you'd asked me before, did I want to go out for, huge portions of 3-course lavish meals and, have lots and lots of meals out, whereas actually now I'm kind of happy just having the social side. And I never really thought I'd be content with that. And actually, you talk about it a lot, but it is the reason you're going out. The food is just secondary. And, we obviously talk a lot about primary and secondary foods through the program. But having that ability to just take a step back from the food and go, really, this isn't the reason why you're here. I'm here to enjoy my friends' company. I'm here to have a good time. And I'm going to feel good at the end of the night because I've chosen to eat foods that make me feel good rather than to eat foods that I think I should be eating because I'm on a night out. And that was a game changer for me. And I think that along with the weight loss is fantastic. I'm in clothes I've never been in before. I'm in sizes I've never been in before. In the entirety of my adult life, I'm below any weight I've ever been as an adult, and pretty much a child to be on the age of 11. So that is fantastic. But I think the bigger win is being able to maintain that and know confidently that what I'm doing day to day absolutely stays where I can stay there.
How does that feel for you?
Amazing. It's just the first time that I think my brain is clear of the issue of food. It's so consuming, and I think it's only when people become so obsessed with something like dieting and weight loss that they really understand. But it is just so miserable to be completely consumed for most of your adult life by something that actually, when you follow a particular path, is so easy to solve, but you're so confused by the mass media that is out there, when actually the solution was there all along. I just needed to find it.
Mm-hmm. I can see such a difference in your energy from when we first spoke. When we first spoke, I could see your head spinning, and now you're so much calmer and at peace.
Yep.
This is a different person, or it's the real version of you that was masked
Yep.
for so long.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for the first time in my life, I can kind of think about other stuff, and it isn't. I don't have to worry. I had a perpetuating cycle where I had to eat 6 times a day because that was what I was told the plan must be. And so I'd become really stressed if I was out for more than 2 or 3 hours, because my food supply would run out and I wouldn't be able to get to the next meal, or it wouldn't be a meal I could eat because it wasn't on the plan that I was following. And I did follow some bonkers plans over the years. But now it's just like, whatever, it's fine. I'm so sustained and full most of the time that even if it does stretch a little bit more than probably I was intending, it doesn't really matter, because the food that I eat is so readily available anyway. I could just nip to the supermarket and buy myself, a punnet of cherry tomatoes or a banana. It's so easy to get. And I still follow a very simple version of the program because it just works for me. It's just so easy to do. And fundamentally, that is also a massive win, because before it'd be weighing and measuring and thinking, and is that on the program? Is not on the program? I was just exhausted. I was exhausted and just tired of thinking about it.
Did you ever think that you would get to this place?
No.
So here's the thing.
No.
If you didn't think you'd ever get to this place, then why did you join the program?
Because I think I'd got to the point where I just thought, even if I can have a small win, it's better than what I feel like now, which is completely hopeless. And I got to the point where I was completely hopeless about it. And I think most people that, apart from my very close net, would be really surprised by that, because I kept it so locked down. And that in itself is exhausting, because you're trying to pretend that you're all good when actually you're really not. And you try and put this mask on. And actually now I'm like, I don't have a mask. I'm very clear about what I want to eat. I'm very clear with friends when I go out that I don't need to eat anything else. In fact, I went out for dinner with friends last week and I was just really clear. Don't worry about making me anything fancy. I'm really good. Just do me some potatoes and vegetables and I'm good. And that's just my go-to. And it's so easy for people to do. There's no effort, there's no stress. And it's just a clear and clarity that just is just there all the time.
Thank you for trusting me through this process. It is not easy to hand over. It feels like the keys to the kingdom. I'm putting so much trust in these people. This is my body. And so I applaud you, and I'm so grateful that you trusted me and your coaches, because now you see it from our side, where from our side, once you're over here, you're like, okay, now I understand why why they told me this and why they said to trust it. But when you're going through it, it's really hard and really scary. So thank you.
No, thank you for creating a program that solved my adult problem. It solved it. And I'm just so grateful that I took the leap and actually joined the program in the first place, and realizing that actually I genuinely couldn't have done it alone. I couldn't have habit formed as I've done in such a strong way that would have really given me the tools to do this forever, and give me really what I really would have hoped to have found in my 20s, but I didn't. But at least now I can have it in my 40s, and feel confident in my clothes. And I enjoy fashion. I want to look good. Even at in that age that I am now. I want to feel good and confident in that. And I don't hide from that. And I do now. I feel good, and don't feel like I'm kind of sitting awkwardly in a chair. And I would never say that I was huge. I wasn't, and most people would have on the outside looked in would have gone, "What's the matter with you?" But actually, I mean, having lost 25 pounds, that's a big number. I mean, it's way double than I ever intended to lose, and actually happened. The last few pounds actually happened in my maintenance part of the program when I'd really stopped trying to lose weight, which just shows you how much this works. So I think it's just testimony to you guys really, and the coaches are amazing and give you both sides of the perspective of both the psychological and the physical. part of the program.
Thank you so much, Emma, for this interview. Your vulnerability and your honesty is so appreciated, and I'm sure that you helped many people that are watching this right now. If you want results like Emma, click the link in the down bar and let's get this thing started. I love you, honeys. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one.